I'm so happy you found Virago 24/7. If you're loving this podcast, please go to wherever you're listening and rate the show. 5 stars would be very much appreciated. I wouldn't mind a review as well. And also, please share this podcast with your friends. Hi, I am your host, Leonette Talley, and you are listening to Virago 24/7. Virago is Latin for female warrior, and 24/7 is for all day, every day. Virago 24/7 is a weekly podcast that brings diverse women together to talk about life and our experiences in this world. We share our views on self-love, mental health, marriage, children, friendships, and really anything that needs to be talked about. Here, you will find everyday growth, everyday healing with everyday warriors. Just give me my space to move, 'cause it's my thoughts, what I want, and I want what I want. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
This is the first.
I can go first.
Okay, you'll go first.
Age before beauty.
All right. So this is, I think, the first time I record on a Friday when there's no alcohol involved. So this says a lot about what's happening today. This is serious stuff.
Very serious.
Very serious. Because anytime it goes for like 5-hour recordings, and I'm like, I gotta edit this now.
Man.
So hello, it's Friday afternoon, and I'm here with Meghann McNalley. Hello, Meghann.
Hi, Lena.
We have Carolyn Harshaw. Oh no, she likes to be Carolyn Talley Harshaw, correct?
Right.
Hello.
Yes.
She's on Zoom all the way from Arkansas, and then we have Erica Freeman.
Hey.
Hi. So we're here. I asked everyone to come here today because I'm a little bit, I get obsessed about certain topics, and education is like one of those things on my list. I have 3 kids. Erica has 2 and 4 like bonus children. McNalley has 2. And Carolyn, you have a lot of kids.
Yes.
How many you have?
I have about 10, including bonus adopted.
Kids. Yeah, she has a lot of bonus babies.
Their spouses, they count too.
I love Carolyn because she counts everyone as family.
I love
that. Everyone's all included. So, okay. So I've done a few shows on homeschooling, which homeschooling's not for everyone. You know, that's for certain people, and that topic has fascinated me. But I want to talk about education as a whole. And I know we can't change everything today or tomorrow, but I wanted to talk about it because I have kids that we've had to make, adjustments because of the way they learn and the way they think. And I wanted to bring on Meghann because she's a parent that has a story and has had frustrations. And then I wanted to bring Erica on and Carolyn on because they are educators and teachers. And I just wanted to get their perspective, how things look in the classroom, what you guys would want to change, if you can change anything in a perfect world. So before we get into all of that, I want Erica and Carolyn to introduce themselves. How long have you been teaching? What do you teach? We can start with Miss Carolyn.
Yes, age before beauty.
Yes.
Carolyn Talley Harshaw. I retired this school year. I taught a total of 14 years, almost 15. I started out as a substitute teacher, and then I went and got my certification. I was in alternative school, and then I went to a gifted and talented school, and then I went to a regular school. But I've always been a math teacher, and I've taught 6th, 7th, 8th, and Algebra 1 math.
You, Erica?
Okay. This is my 17th year in education. I've served in all urban settings, but this is my first year in a completely alternative setting. So things that I've noticed in the past, are really right in front of me right now in the alternative setting. I've seen things that are that many people have talked about before. We're going to get into that. So it's very prevalent for me right now. So when Leonette and I will have conversations, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that. And we need to talk about it. So yeah, 17 years I teach English language arts, and I've covered 6th through 12th grade.
Nice. Well, I know. So if you haven't been listening to all the shows, which would be nice if you listen to all of them, but if you don't, I want to recap a few things. So my son was in private school for 2 years, and then he was in public school, 3rd and 4th. And around that time, there were some things that came up where the teachers were, reaching out to us because he just was shutting down. He just wasn't, it wasn't a fit for him. And I remember reaching out to Erica, and I was so desperate at that time. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. It's one of those things where you think we're chugging along through life, everything's going great, and then you realize, oh, my child's not doing well. And I remember talking to Erica, and you said, you need to watch because he's a little black boy and the world sees him that way, even though I don't, I just see him as a sweet little boy, and they're going to put him in a box and they're going to start fitting him in this box. So you need to do something now. Right. And that was like the first time, honestly, ever that it ever opened my eyes to, wow, our school systems are made for children that fit in little boxes. And if you don't fit in that box, you can get left behind. And if you don't have a parent that's proactive, or even there's parents that probably want to be proactive, but just don't have the time. If they're a single mom and they work all the time, and these kids fall through the cracks. So that was my first time where I'm like, fortunately for me, we have the resources where we could send them somewhere. We could send them to a private school. We have options. But how about those that don't have those options? So I want to talk about so many things about the education system.
Right, and just to piggyback on what you were saying, and I made it a point to tell you he's a little black boy, because people don't like to understand the school to prison pipeline. It is very, very real. And you didn't want him to start getting labeled in the area that we're in, because once he starts to be seen as the troubled kid in the class, then he gets write-ups for minor things, and then they turn into major things. So you didn't. I wanted to tell you, don't allow him to be labeled.
Yeah. Well, and it's true, because we had to sign papers. I don't know if it was a write-up, but they wrote something up.
Right.
And they're like, and that was going to go in his record. And if he would have continued down that path, and he was, honestly, if we would have kept him in that environment, it would have led into that.
Right. Because in my alternative setting, I don't like to look at why my students have ended up in my school, right? I try to give them a clean slate. I don't know what you did, but sometimes I'll go in and say, because I'm like, why is this child here? And that's what makes me look. And when I know we'll dig deeper into this later.
Let's do it now. Like, we don't have to go, let's dig in now.
When you see a write-up and that child was in 2nd and 3rd grade, where was the intervention? Where was the advocacy for this child?
Right. They're babies.
And what kind of write-up do you see?
It can be like really, really, to me, I feel like it's minor things. It could be talking back.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't want to say they threw a pencil across the room, but I mean, it's stuff like that that equates to me as
they're
that's
8.
Fixable. And it's like maybe they came from an environment that they just needed you to say, "Hey, how you doing today?"
Right.
And not, why did you do that? Like, start the yelling.
And they're little. That's when they're supposed to be.
And not understanding. Yeah, there's a reason why kids shut down at such a young age. There's a reason why they act out. Instead of berating them and let's write them up and there's a problem and you need to get them tested and there's something going on. We need to figure out, instead of, because they were starting to label him like learning disability. You need to get him tested. You need to do all these things. And we didn't. I was ready. I was prepared to do all those things. but it wasn't needed and it wasn't required. And those tests cost thousands and thousands of dollars from what I hear through the grapevine.
Right.
So Carolyn, what experience do you have with that?
Yes, I was in an alternative setting for 12 years, and I actually went into the alternative setting purposefully because I wanted to be, and I told all my students, I said, I'm a clog in the pipeline to prison. There is low academic expectation for young men of color, and there's a low tolerance for misbehavior. Erica gave the example of just throwing a pencil. It depends on the student's mindset and is very difficult to put all students in a box. And that's what the school system is designed to do. And we know that we live in a racist, white supremacy system. And the young men of color, especially, because when I started teaching, most of my students were just young men of color. I mean, it was like 99% young men of color in alternative school. And I would say, well, where is everybody else? I know other students have problems. Why is this only? And then that's when I discovered that it was the pipeline to prison. I was determined when I went there to be a person who actually saw them as individuals rather than a group.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I had to pull up some statistics, okay? Because I live in Fulton County. And if you look at the number of young men who are in prison, okay, it's like,
yes,
you see numbers like 93% of the total intake of youth served is African American, but Fulton County is 44% African American. So, you see all these inflated numbers, and then when you work in an alternative setting, and like you said, Carolyn, you see it's primarily boys of color, right? And it's just like, this is a problem. And then when you go look and you see this child has been written up since 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and it's like nobody tried to intervene and see what the real problem was for this kid. Like everybody starts getting frustrated, and it's just like you hear from the previous teacher that had him the year before, because we know teachers all talk. And it's like, oh yeah, he's a problem. And so instead of giving that clean slate, they already come and going to the next grade level, being labeled
with the mark.
And it sticks with them.
And it sticks. And nobody takes that time to advocate and figure out what's going on. So it's just like.
And I feel as humans, it's only natural that when someone already has like a mark coming in, you may not know someone, but if you heard someone say, hey, so-and-so is this, they're going to have a bias. Any little thing that person does, you're going to be like, oh, that person was right. Yep, that person's this. Right. And then you're not even going to have your own judgment, if you're just.
Right.
So.
And it's almost too, from a school system standpoint, I completely agree with Carolyn that it is. And she used white supremacist school system. It is, right? And so you have that. It is geared for white kids. Then you have it where it is geared for white kids who have money. And then the teachers, you have a school system that is so focused on standardize this, test this,
I want to talk about that,
funding this, that then even if you have teachers who maybe don't want to be that way, maybe see something, maybe could provide some level of breaking that down, they are not equipped or even supported to do something within that system. Even if they want to, you've got to be, especially depending on where you are, you've got to completely go outside of that. And I love, Carolyn, what you said. I am the cog in that pipeline, right? You've got put yourself in that position to then figure out how to break it down.
the school system is not designed for, and we want to get into your story with this, children who learn differently.
Right.
Yeah.
If you are not that cookie cutter child who learns this specific way, they want to push you aside.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
that's a problem too.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what color that
No.
child
That's
is
true.
when it comes to a learning disability.
Yeah.
But I even think about it, it's that much harder for people of color, people without money, people without access, right? Everything available to kids who need something, whether it is more support, whether it's they learn differently, you have to have resources in order to get it in our system. And that is what, I mean, we are failing our children because of it.
Yeah.
And children of color are more impacted. And then you have children who, whether white or of color, who have no money, who are then impacted. It is such a broken system for children who need the support.
Yeah. And Carolyn, I want to get into Megan's story. But before we get into that, what Meghann said is that there are teachers that want to make that change, but they don't have the support. And I know you, Carolyn, I don't know if you want to talk about it, like your struggles and frustrations and instances where you've tried to make changes and you've been kind of pushed down, like be quiet, stay in your place. Do you want to share some of those?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Now that I'm retired, I can share it.
Right? You see, I'm choosing my words very carefully over here because I am not retired yet.
Not anytime soon, right?
Not yet.
I was recommended for termination 3 times.
Ooh.
And it was strictly a matter of I didn't fit into the box. And I spoke out. I was determined that all children should have an opportunity to learn. They tried pitting the children and the parents against me. I was also attacked.
Wow.
Parents and children, I told them that I had no intention of filing any charges or anything because I knew what was happening. I wouldn't participate in the gaslighting. I had been Teacher of the Year. When I went to professional development and I found new ways to reach different types of children, I would always incorporate it. And when someone came to the classroom, they were just most impressed. And then later I would get a document saying, we understand that you just sit around the classroom and you just ignore the children. You know, it was bizarre stuff. And I was saying,
so what was the real issue that they were, I mean, that sounds like a very PC polite way or, you know, like a cop out. So what was it that they didn't like that you were doing?
Teaching. That's the bottom line.
They didn't like your way of teaching?
Yeah, well, no, it was teaching, period. There is what they call, and Erica knows about it, grade inflation. It was required in the Little Rock School District that you had to give an A, B, or C. And if the child didn't turn in any assignments at all, I had students that were working hard and doing well, but then another child did one assignment and they may have done well on the assignment, and there were 20 assignments. They said, no, you have to give that child an A because they made an A on that one assignment.
Oh, stop. Really?
I'm telling you, it was bizarre. And when I went to the school board, I told them the truth. And none of the parents showed up. And one of the members of the school board said, this is crazy. if you want your child to learn and this person, because they said that I actually had abused children. And I was supposed to pick up one boy because I had the power of a man. I was supposed to have picked up one boy and threw him out of the trailer.
Oh my God.
I was, they just charged me with.
Carolyn, did you pick the boy up and throw him out the trailer?
And of course, Leonette, you know me well.
Yes.
I was in heels and a dress.
Yeah.
That's what I came to school in every day. And I'm saying, now let's be serious here. Do you actually think that I would do something like that? And they just tried gaslighting me and making up stuff on me. And they thought I would go away, but I didn't go away. And then, of course, I have a son who is a Harvard-trained attorney, and he was there in the hearing, and so he was wonderful, and so, but they didn't let that go. They went before the state school board, and then I had tapes of them planning this against me.
Wow.
And
Oh my God.
so,
I didn't know that part.
Wow.
oh yeah. It's
So you can be teacher of the year and then they still want
Wow.
to terminate you? That's fascinating.
yes, and the principal, and this was supposed to be a gifted and talented school, and actually it turned out that it was a farce. It wasn't really gifted and talented. There was about 7 to 10 children that were actually gifted and talented, out of say 250 to 350. And so when I came and questioned certain things, they said, we have to get her out of here.
Yeah, don't question the system.
Yeah.
Validity of those grades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that's how they got to keep all their little awards and
Exactly.
everything.
You get your
Yes. And I was told, you're going to put us in jeopardy. Our gifted and talented label, you're going to put us in jeopardy. And then the principal said, you're not giving the right grades. And the students had been taught that all they had to do was show up. In fact, I did a survey with my students, and they said, well, the way it's been here is if I just come to class, I automatically get a C.
wow.
I don't have to do any work. And you're not fitting in. And so they went to the principal and complained, and the vice principal. And then that's when the vice principal really went after me. And the thing about this is, I told the school board, the thing that hurts the most is everybody involved in this they were Black people.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I mean, so it sounds like it's the system as a whole that's just like Meghann said, it's broken because they're just
It's
focused
broken.
on the testing and I don't even know, when did this happen where the grades determine how awesome the school is? Was that always like that? I don't remember.
For a very long time.
Yeah.
No. That's a good question, actually.
Tying the funding
To your
to
performance.
how well
To
your
the
school performs. That's why you have the CCRPI and all of that thing. Like if the parent survey come back and it's not where it needs to be, then that school, and then the district steps in and just things like that. It's just so
They just put pressure.
Yeah, it's so much pressure.
And then our kids
to
suffer
perform well
from that. Yeah.
And also the thing that happens is if there's a charter school system in the state, students are commodities, and administrators in because charter schools are considered public schools too, but in the regular public school system, administrators go to great lengths to keep as many bodies as possible in the building because parents will threaten to take them out and send them to a charter school and or a private school, and then the funding is totally based on how many bodies you have in the seats.
Well, that's BS, because I know. So when we moved, so we were on, even though we're in the same area, across the little highway that we have, it's one school, elementary school. And then when we moved to this side of the town, the school that's here, the elementary school that's here, everyone just raved about it. It's the best school, the best elementary school, one of the best in our county. And it's been good for my youngest. But when, like I said, for Khalil, my son, I'm like, what is this that the people have been talking about this school? And I don't know. I know, Meghann, you have a story about your daughter with the same school that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what happened there, and what frustrations did you have?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just looking to find out when
That's fine.
standardized tests
It just
and
happened.
when the funding started.
Oh,
Right,
I want to know because
right.
we just had the testing this week, and Corinne came home like, if I don't pass this test, I'm not going to the next grade. I'm like, calm down. You will. They put so much pressure. She's like, I know the material, but why do we have to do it? And within 2 hours? And why do we have to be timed? And why all this pressure? And everything leads up to this one big test at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just BS to me.
Well, and here's the thing that's crazy, and that's what, when we were saying, when did this all start? I don't have the answer to that, but I know, so much of school funding is based on taxes, right? It's funded through property taxes. And so
yes.
you look at those schools that have higher property values, higher property taxes, those schools are getting more funding, but those aren't necessarily the schools that need the funding.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have this disproportionate domino effect of the schools who are getting more funding. Oftentimes those are in higher wealth neighborhoods. A lot of those kids aren't even going to those schools. But then you have areas where they don't have the funding that they need because of property taxes. And those kids need the funding, right? It's so broken all the way down. And it's I think you could do a whole episode around funding for schools and why they qualify. And that was part of my experience, was all around the school where we were. It's, a blue ribbon school.
Yeah,
and
which is a big deal.
It's that's a big deal, and it's got to have all that. And, our experience is, we went into this public school. My daughter was in kindergarten, and we had seen in preschool some signs of something, and we thought it was emotional. She was pretty shy and reserved and didn't really think anything of it. And when she got into kindergarten at the school, again, this was touted as the best school ever. This is a great, great school. Heard so many good things about it. What we learned is that, again, it's for the kids who fit perfectly in the box. And very early on, we were very fortunate that my daughter's teacher in kindergarten, she raised a flag to us. And she was one of the only teachers in that school who had been trained in alternative teaching methods. She raised a flag early on. It was early in the school year. And she said, I think that there's something with Margaret and how she's learning. I think, I don't want to diagnose, but I see that, she's falling behind, and she was one of the older kids in her class. And so I immediately started doing a ton of research and just looking, right? And again, this goes back to resources. I have a network of friends who I start pulling information from. I have access to information.
Exactly.
I'm starting to do research, right?
Like you and I are in the same boat because we're in a really great area.
Yes,
yeah,
we're in a great area. Yeah. And so, all of this research, all this information that I see, it says, you've got to go do these private tests, and they're $4,000 plus, and you've got to do this. If you want to make it anywhere within the county system, you've got to go through all these hurdles. The access to information is so difficult. They do not make it accessible for people to find out how you navigate the system to get the tools for your kids that you need. And that was one of the biggest things that we saw was I would reach out, and I was proactive. I reached out to the principal, the assistant principal, the school counselor, her teacher, the county, every single time it was a dead end. Every single time it was a dead end. We've got to make an appointment. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And it's like, we're talking about, we've identified a potential learning difference. Let's do something about it. Right. And it was all the red tape. And I am one story of thousands of this, impacting. And thank God we have resources, and we did the private test, and I fought that school. And I remember I would email them. I would email the assistant because they would never get back to me. And I would say, when are we meeting? When are we meeting? This is what we had to do. This is what we have to do. And I remember sitting in one of our first parent meetings, and it was the school counselor, my daughter's teacher, the assistant principal. They brought in a woman from the county because we had paid for this private assessment, that plain as day. And it was a 6-hour assessment by a doctor, and plain as day. My daughter has dyslexia. She's got skyrocket IQ, etc. She has dyslexia. She learns differently when it comes to phonics and language. That's it. They had absolutely no idea, and they were not willing to even talk about what our options were.
Really?
And her teacher, they said, she's too young. Let's give it some time. We know what the issue is. What are the options, right? Well, did
they think she was going to grow out of it or something?
They wouldn't even give me an answer to it. It was just sort of like, she's too young. Let's see how she does, right? I said, okay, so what do? We just wait. We know the information. Well, and her teacher, she said, she goes, the one thing, and the teacher was amazing. Honestly, I am so grateful for this teacher, because I don't know if without her, we would have known, we would have found out, right? But I remember her teacher, we were in this room, and she said, I see Margaret, and she's shutting down. She was such a leader, and she led the class, and she was interested in school, and she was participating. And I'm seeing her, and she's shutting down. She no longer talks in class. She sees that kids younger than she is can read, and she's not. And she's shutting down, right?
Yeah.
And then, the assistant principal and the woman from the county looked and said, well, we've got a tiered system, right? You've got tier 1, tier 2, right? They don't tell you, right? I had to go and ask every person under the sun. Everybody's in tier 1.
Yeah, they're talking about RTI, response to intervention.
Right. They don't tell you that everybody's in tier 1.
Wait, okay, what does that mean?
That so in order to get, so this is all in terms of an IEP, which is then government approved funding for people. So individual families, we all pay taxes into this program. Every one of us pays taxes. It's your money paid into this taxes. If your kids, you get an IEP, you get money back that you can use towards tutoring, that you can use they make it so hard to follow that. They looked at me and said, well, it'll be 6 months until we move her into tier 2. And I said, I have paid documentation. You're telling me that she's falling behind. She's 6 and she's not reading. You want me to wait another 6 months to see what happens? And they all just looked at me, right? And I said, I'm not leaving this room until you move her up. I'm not leaving this room.
Wow.
And I just sat there. And then, and then I'll be quiet. But
no, tell your story.
The thing that made, and I looked at them, right, and I just said, I am lucky enough. I don't have a boss who's asking me where I am, because I've had to have 6 meetings with you over the last 2 months. I'm not losing my wages because I'm here, right? I've got a partner who can help with my kids so that we can figure this out. And we're figuring it out. What about those kids who don't have this? And I am still finding you guys you are a complete blocker to helping my kid when we know what's going on. What about kids who don't have that situation? Like you said, Leah, single parent families, parents who are hourly and don't have flexibility to come in, they lose their wages.
Yep.
They don't have it. They make it
And do they have the means to do these tests to see what the problem is? Yeah.
No. And I hear from parents over and over. And I remember I started participating in an Atlanta dyslexia network, and there are 3,000 parents on this Facebook group. Okay. And you hear all of these stories, right? And this is dyslexia. This is not, it could be much worse.
Yeah, that's just
it's just one thing.
Yeah.
You hear all these parents going, there are the thousands of parents who just these stories of, I can't get my kids the help that they need. And for me to do it, it requires thousands of dollars that I don't have.
And time.
What do I do?
Yeah.
Right? It's desperate. And our school system doesn't. I mean, we were able to make very significant life changes to get my daughter into a private school. But when
did you leave that room?
I left. So I sat there, and they all stared at me. Her sweet teacher, who I adore, you could tell her heart.
Yeah, because it's out of their hands.
It was out of her hands.
Yeah.
But the other few, I saw zero concern for it, and it was just like no big deal.
Yep.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I said, I said, these kids, right? You have a kid who you just told me was a leader, who enjoyed school, who participated, and you want to wait to see all of these kids get pushed through. And guess what? She's white. And we've got research. Like, thank God, all these other, and that's what makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
Because we were in that situation, and you think about all these kids who you don't, and the sacrifices we had to make, and we've made a lot. But also, I'm not worried about, am I going to put food on the table because they're easier sacrifices, right? But it's just we are failing our children. Yeah. And we are certainly failing our children of color. Yeah. It's sick.
So you took her out and put her...
We took her out. We put her in a private school, which that's a whole other thing. It's been a godsend, but you want to talk about white privilege. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Man, right? And I am... grateful. I mean, that school, it has been life-changing. Yeah. And I talk to these parents on this network, and there is such a lack of resources. And you have parents who are moving school districts because, DeKalb County, that's got better, thing. And so you've got people who are moving to get in because they can't. And then you've got COVID, right? So now you've got all these kids who are falling behind so much. Yeah. And the schools... they can't support kids who don't fit in a box when there isn't a global pandemic. These kids, they are absolutely getting lost. Yeah. Whether it's a learning disability, whether they need something different, whether it's they've got, things that they need access to that they were only getting into school. I mean, the school systems can't support what these kids need. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for telling that story.
Me too.
Because it's the shameful part of it is that's one story. Right. Yeah. But there are thousands.
Thousands.
Yes. And I have been the person in the meeting, and they would try to avoid me being in the meeting because I was an advocate. Mm-hmm. And what would happen is it's exactly as you said. They just sit there and look at you, or they try to make some excuse, and it is so ridiculous for somebody to tell you wait, because everyone knows that if your child is not reading by a certain time, I mean, we know that as far as this pipeline to prison, they look at your third grade and fourth grade reading score. Right. And so there's a part of me that says, I'm glad, how you are someplace and you say, I'm glad that's not just me. I wasn't the only one that was seeing this, but it is so pitiful.
It is pitiful.
What has happened to our education system. And Leonette, you were asking, when did this exactly happen?
Yeah.
Right, I looked it up too.
Started with standardized testing, and there was an emphasis to teach to the test. And then you could say, well, and that's what, and we know this happened in Atlanta. That's what drove, people ended up in prison.
Yeah,
That's what drove them to start, they were marking out answers and putting in the right answer. And because there's so much pressure on administrators and then teachers, and most, of course, Leonette, that it wasn't it was my third career going into teaching. Yeah. And I felt I was called to be an advocate and to, I was going to go in and really work hard to make sure that every child got the opportunity they needed. And children really want to learn and they're capable of it.
Yeah.
But if you have any type of different way of learning, it's, they just try to make sure that, that you go away. And some of the time, they'll just say, well, just give that child an A or B, because there are so many parents that are motivated by grades rather than their child actually learning.
Exactly.
And I used to tell parents, I said, you know what, if my child was being treated like your child, I would go and I would demand action immediately. And they were like, and it was just like you said, they couldn't get off work, or they had 3 jobs, and it just.
I mean, also my other gripe, because Meghann and I are talking about the same school, and with Khalil, it was his third grade teacher was horrible, and that's when it started. And in 4th grade, his 3rd grade teacher I don't even want to get into it because it's going to make me very upset, but I don't think she even works there anymore. His 4th grade teacher was so sweet. So when we really had to look at each other, me and Philip, and realize, okay, we have to do something for him. And like you said, okay, we didn't meet with the principal or anything, but it was his teacher and the counselor. And really they just because with him, he was shutting down, and he's a quiet kid anyways. So then he's talking about hurting himself, which we had no clue. He wrote a little note or something, and one of the kids from his class found it. I'm dumb. I'm not smart. I don't want to be here anymore. And he would leave me notes here at the house. And every day I would drop him off and I want to cry. And I would send him in there this is what we do.
Right.
We go to school,
right.
And it was so hard. He was always so sad. And give me a second.
Take your time.
So they're emailing me, and there's a problem, and I'm jumping all over it. I'm like, let's go meet with the school, let's meet with the counselor, let's get him a tutor, because he was having difficult time writing. He's a very black and white kid. He doesn't want to read a book and write about the imaginary ending, make up another, that's just not the way his brain thinks. He's like, why do I have to write about that? I'm like, but that's just what you have to write about. Right. So it's little things that they're made to do that just doesn't make sense in their little minds. So basically they wanted to meet, but mostly it was more sign this paper so that we don't have any responsibility to anything that happens in the future with your child. And I kept getting emails, and we did everything on our end. We got him the tutor. We got him, we were talking to him at home, and I'm thinking, okay, is it something that we have to change at home as parents? It was none of that. He's like, I hate school. The kids are horrible. And I would volunteer in that class. And this teacher was so sweet. She had zero control over her class. There's 25 kids in there. Rowdy boys. And you're expecting this quiet child to sit there and do his work while we had this disruption going on with these other kids that don't know how to follow directions. Right. But he's the one that's getting pegged. And so finally there was one day where I was like, I am done. Like, instead of pointing your finger at the one child, how about you get this group of little heathen children?
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to call these boys heathens, but Khalil finally opened up. We had to like really pry it out of him. And they were like, oh, well, he shuts down at the cafeteria at lunchtime. And he would cry. And I'm like, why is he crying? Finally, he's like, Mommy, I'm sitting with these boys. They're talking about sex. This is in 4th grade. He's 10. And they're talking about being gay. And I'm like, well, do you have any questions? Do you want to talk about that? He's like, I just feel like we're too young. And you guys know Khalil. He's not a very outspoken little kid. He literally said, we're too young to talk about that. And in the public school system, if you sit down, they have these assigned little seats. And you have to sit there and eat your lunch. And it doesn't matter. You can't swap or sit by your friends. And I said, there's 2 boys in the class that he likes. He needs to sit with them. Stop emailing me about this bullshit. I was very so upset because I'm a nice person until you push me, because all the emails were like real sweet. And I'm like, and you guys are trying to cover your asses.
Right.
And you're pointing fingers.
DYA.
Yeah. And I'm like, move his seat. This is why he's crying at lunch, because these boys are talking about crap that my son is not ready to talk about. So this is why he's shutting down. Instead of saying that he's like this weird child, figure out why that's happening. And this poor teacher, she resigned after that year. And I understand, because I would volunteer in that class and I'm like, holy crap. And this is the quote unquote good school in this area. So can you imagine the underfunded schools and how a hot mess is going on? These teachers should not be in a classroom with 20-something kids. Especially some of these teachers that are so sweet that don't have the backbone to put a smack down on some of these kids. It's horrible.
Right.
I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Well, and then they can't even focus on that, because then they're just worried, are we going to get the test done?
Yeah.
Are we going to do this? Am all my kids going to be on the test?
And speaking of that, just to clarify for your listeners, it started in 1994 with what was called AYP, Adequate Yearly Progress. And I remember learning about this because I was going through my education program, and there was such a focus on AYP. Did we meet AYP? We still have AYP, by the way.
Really?
It's just the districts have all changed the name.
Okay.
It's something else, but it's still tied to funding. They rebranded it, but it's still tied to funding. Your standardized test scores is something that is tied to your funding. And it all started with AYP. And it was like some number, like if 95% of your kids didn't meet this adequate yearly progress, then after 3 years, they come in and they start basically auditing your school. What's going on, blah, 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 and you could lose funding. So that's where the pressure started. It was like, okay, then they started, you teaching to the test, because if we don't meet AYP, we can lose our funding after 3, 4, 5 years if we don't meet it in a row, 3 years in a row. So it's 1994. It still exists. We don't say AYP anymore because, like you said, they've all rebranded the name, but it's still
and it's all driven off politics.
And then it started moving to
wasn't
moving to the teacher salaries being tied to how well your students performed.
Yeah.
if you got your next step. You know, so
So it sounds like they don't even have time to connect with the kids on an emotional level. I mean, I'm sure there's some teachers. This is not a let's hate on teachers.
Right.
That's not it. It's the system.
This is not a teacher issue.
No, not at all. I think it is a system issue.
One thing the pandemic taught us, if you didn't know it before the pandemic, you know it now, that the system is broken.
The system is broken.
Yes.
It is broken.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is one thing that has come of this. If people didn't know before, you know now.
Well, and I mean, even with Corinne, she's been fine. She's at that same school that Meghann and I are talking about. She's still there. However, you know, she fits in that box, but why just because you fit in that box, why make someone, like after this pandemic, she's been opening my eyes to, she's asking me questions. I'm like, because this is how it's been done all these years. Well, why do we have to sit in a classroom all those hours? It's so boring. And, it's so much pressure to learn all these things and then take this test and have it timed and all. And so she's been questioning me and I have zero answers. I'm like, because this is how we did it and the people before us and the people before. And so I don't know what needs to change, how it needs to change, but it has to change. And putting so much pressure on these teachers to perform is not healthy for the kids. Everyone's missing the point of education if that's the way we're doing things.
And now, based on, Erica just told us it was, and that's the way it used to be here too. It was AYP. And now it's been changed to growth. And so that was to maintain funding. So if you had, they put it in paper that we had to have a certain percentage of growth, you would be okay. But if you didn't make it, your school was labeled, and then you had to, they would send in all sorts of things where you were supposed to do better, but there weren't any resources. And it is all comes down to money.
Yeah.
And it is systematic, but children are individuals.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm finding that there are less students who actually fit in boxes.
That is so true.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is there's kids that maybe don't fit in a box, but I'm going to make myself fit in a box because that's their personality. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be different. I'm going to fit in this box. But then there's anxiety because of it. And then there's depression because of it. And there's all these things. And we're wondering, why do we have all these young people with all these issues?
Kids aren't meant to learn in that.
Yeah.
They're learning for a reason. Their brains and the way that they're exposed to all of it. They're not meant to learn in this confined structure of A, B, C, or D. And by doing that, like you said, Leonette, it puts them all in a box. And, I've just been sitting here thinking so much about, Erica, what you just said, or what you said before around, these kids are labeled, right? They're labeled from the early on because we have this systemized thing that everybody has to fit into, right? And when we grew up, we had grades, but it wasn't like this, right? And so these kids, they are young and impressionable, and you tell them something, they start believing what they hear.
Yeah.
And so of course then you have this pipeline. Of course you get these kids who, when they're 7 and 8-year-old babies, are said, you're a problem. Yeah. You have this issue. You don't fit in. You can't.
And then the anger
starts.
Yep, exactly.
The anger.
Starts. And the anger brings about different types of behaviors. And they don't understand why they're displaying this behavior. That's because they believe what they were labeled as. And nobody is trying to turn that around.
Yeah, no one's giving them a voice.
Right.
And if you have a parent that works all the time and they don't have that energy, time, resources, like Meghann was saying, they're just left out to survive.
And it's no fault of the parents.
No,
every
not at
single
all.
parent, they want what's best. But if you, again, it's so much about margin and resource. And then these kids, they get lost, and that is what creates it, right? And like you said, think about, I hear over and over again, like what you just said, Leonette, these kids who you have 8, 9, 10-year-olds who have depression and anxiety, and every other kid is, and I believe in all of this. I fully believe in mental health issues, and I think it's a real thing. I think that there is also an issue when we have this overarching, all these kids who have these problems. There is something wrong. And think about where they spend the bulk of their time. It is school. Yep. And then everybody, you've got a lot, I see it all the time, especially around here, and I just can't get behind it. And this is probably a whole other thing. The parents who that's all they care about is whether or not their kid got this grade on this. So you have parents who then you're keeping up with
from the broken system, from the collegiate level.
Yes.
Whereas, okay, If you are on the IB track, AP track, honors courses, then you won't get accepted here. So it comes from that. And parents, we've become so fixated on you got to go to college. Right.
Yeah.
That
I don't believe in that.
So much so that we don't have trade schools. That are free anymore. And that was a thing when I was younger. We had trade schools. We had co-ops where you could go to high school and take your courses half a day, and then you went to something you liked, where it's auto mechanics or something you got certified in it. That stuff, they have taken that away. Everybody's not making
and they devalued it,
agree.
Right? They devalued it that college is not for everybody. And listen, my business is in the trade, and our businesses that we own, we are begging for tradespeople, technicians, electricians, plumbers. The people who have these skills are making six figures. They can go anywhere they want because they are in such high demand. They're getting signing bonuses. They make their own hours. But
that's looked down upon.
It's looked down upon. And there's a huge need for people in the trades. But we've said, school. And it's not for everybody. No. For some people, and it's great. I mean, college is great.
That day.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. My thing, like our generation got suckered.
I'm going to die before I pay off my student loans.
And I'm just glad it doesn't pass to my kids. Your mama leaving this world with that.
Seriously.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Glad it don't get inherited to you.
Oh, my God.
We got suckered.
I'm going to die before I pay them off.
I mean, I tell my kids, as long as you have a plan, you don't need to go to college. You just have to have some kind of plan, because you're not just going to be hanging out. Just mooching off of me.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But there are so many other options. And I don't know.
I just think that I lost my train of thought. I have so many thoughts.
Because there's a lot to unpack. And the parents are fixated on the grades.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Because the colleges have become so demanding on their acceptance requirements that it's putting so much pressure on the parents to put the pressure on the kids.
Yeah, because you got to go to the big schools. You can't go to a community college. You can't go to the smaller schools. And not even on top of good grades. You have to do volunteering, and you have to do all the sports, and you got to be all the things to everybody.
Never mind go to the community college where it's cheaper.
Yes.
And you can get your 2 years of your pre-reps and then move on. You know, don't let it make sense. Oh my gosh.
To hear more amazing female warrior stories, hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. We would truly appreciate the love. Now back to our show.
Got them in 15 activities. Yeah. It's a wonder why kids have anxiety.
And just imagine, they are dealing with trauma.
Right.
And the school system does not have those who are equipped to deal with it.
No.
You know, the counselors, or most of the counselors they're trained for deciding which courses you take, whereas our students need mental health counselors. They need we need restorative justice specialists.
Well, aren't you trying to do that at your school, Erica?
I was just about to say, now some school districts are trying to move in the direction of SEL, so social emotional learning. Okay, and it's a whole curriculum on that. Castle leads our nation with the training, and so I get to head that next school year, and so I'm excited about
that. Is exciting.
Our kids, all of our kids, need that taught to them explicitly. Okay, they need to understand how to deal with the emotions that they're feeling, so that they know how to interact with others, and it'll stop some of those behaviors. So our goal at my alternative school is to provide SEL to our students, because we want to send them back a better individual. It's not, we don't want you to come back here because it was some problem. We want you to ask to stay here. We want you to be what we call a permissive, where you like, oh, I'm getting what I need here. this is good for me. Can I stay? As opposed to I got in trouble and I have to go. So it's so many districts now that are trying to turn that corner because they realize, like you said, there's so many kids that are 7 and 8 with anxiety and depression, and that's because they're not getting taught how to deal with what they're feeling, and nobody's talking to them.
Yeah.
Nobody's saying, we're not having these circles in the morning where we just talk about, hey, how's your day?
Right.
Yeah.
Where are you on the emoji meter?
Right.
I do that in my class sometimes. Like, okay, so listen, I'm here today. This is where Miss Freeman is at today. And then I explain why. And then they know how to approach me. I know how to approach them. Like, so
That's awesome.
we're trying to get
God, that's
there.
so good.
So I'm hoping
That catches on.
it catches on like quickly, because I am like very interested to see how the next school year starts.
Right.
When August hits and these kids have been at home and they've been affected by the pandemic. And like we talked about on the last podcast I was on, or maybe just in our group, child, we talk a lot.
I know we do talk a lot. I need to carry my microphones wherever we go. Oh wait, stop. Hold that thought. Let me press record.
my little sunshine, which is my youngest, it has taken a toll.
Yeah, we were talking about that off mic, I think.
So it was, because
I was saying,
gonna need some SEL when we go back full swing.
Yep.
The kids are coming back academically behind and they're socially drained.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to deal with that come August.
Yes.
When we're full force, because you're not getting these options.
No.
Everybody's talking about, okay, we're getting vaccinated and things of that nature. Let's go ahead and start school up.
And you've got to transition back in, and they're kids. They got to process all of it.
Yes.
We as adults can't even process all of it, let alone kids going through it.
So I'm hoping we can make this shift and we can stop labeling these kids and start trying to understand what they're dealing with at home, what they're just dealing with growing up. Like,
but it's normal.
Changing.
It's normal.
They're becoming little adults.
Yeah.
Young adults, as I should say. So they're having all of these things happening on the inside that they're not able to talk about or equipped to talk about, and then everybody's just like, you're being bad today.
Right. Yeah, they're not even given permission to have a feeling because they've been labeled. So then you have a feeling, and then that gets you labeled. It's like they're just, everything is shoved back in.
And we have to stop shaming.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do.
Like how you said, Meghann, you found a school for Margaret that is amazing for her. And then I found a school for Khalil that just fits him perfectly. But it's just different. It's not, even though it's a school that he goes to every day and he's there for, the same amount of hours as a public school, just the environment is different. Like they do more arts and, they paint more and they make stuff out of weird things, and they have a STEAM, I think is it STEM or STEAM, where they...
It's either one.
Yeah, where I think at his school is called STEM. I don't know. Where they do stuff with, they make things out of electronics. And so it's not just sitting there and just writing a bunch of stuff or doing all the math. Like they're using their creative minds, which is so important to do. And I think they're taking a lot of that out of public schools as well.
That's how our schooling was when we grew up.
It was.
You had recess.
Yeah.
What a novel concept. Now kids, you have 10 minutes to eat in your chair, and then 10 minutes to
recess too. Like the recess shortens as they get older.
It's ridiculous.
It's like these older kids need a break, a pause in the day too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. They definitely do.
Yes.
I mean, it just, and that's where, I remember, and they've taken everything physical and from a motor skill and a tactile that kids need to learn. They can't learn no matter what, no matter where they are in their learning capability. They don't learn best when you're sitting there with just rote fill in the box, and something that stuck out so much for me, I think about it when we were in school, we wrote, right? We learned how to write with our hands, right? And I didn't think about it until we were going through what we were with my daughter and her dyslexia. And we went to the speaker, the Decatur Dyslexia Network. They have like all these free speakers and they just resources and stuff. And we went, and this woman said, kids who have dyslexia, even frankly, all kids, you need, especially when you're learning to write, when you're learning to do things with your hands, you need that hand, pen, or pencil tactile experience, because your brain is learning, oh, this is a B, this is a C, this is a D. All these kids do now is type.
Yeah.
There's no physical connection to your brain on what that letter means. Right? They're just typing. And so for kids who learn differently, especially with dyslexics, when you're not writing, you don't have that hand brain connection. Your brain isn't wiring to typing. You're just typing on a key. So you never learn. That's what a C is like. And you're not making that connection.
It's so funny you bring that up, Meghann, because literally last week, Khalil's like, when am I going to learn how to write cursive? Because I need to learn how to have a signature.
Right.
And he's in 7th grade. I'm like, yeah, they don't teach cursive anymore. Right. So I went to Barnes and Noble and I got 2 little workbooks, one for Corinne and one for him, because he wants to learn cursive. Right. And I'm like, I didn't even think about you teaching you cursive. So he's like, has this notebook so that he can learn cursive, so that he can have a signature. Amazing. I'm like, that makes total sense. If you don't know how to write cursive, how are you going to have a signature?
Right.
And little stuff like that we don't even think about anymore.
Right.
Exactly. And Meghann was stating what we call in education. Most students are kinesthetic learners. They need something that is connection between the brain and your actual physical self. And I made a note because in that lecturing and demonstration by teachers should be replaced with opportunities to actually learn thinking skills and social skills and the social emotional learning, and where they actually do projects and they actually have experiences. And so not only after COVID, when students come back to school, there are going to be some traumatized teachers because they have been taught that this is the way you handle a classroom. And also the administrators have taught them, if you want to keep your job, this is the way that you're going to have to do. And we have all these different things going on. You have teachers who have been online teaching. You have teachers who were forced to come back into the classroom and only do the classroom, and all of it is political. And my dad used to say, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who likes you.
Yeah.
It's a system that I think it needs to be totally restarted. And this might be an opportunity for us. Just like you said, Erica, there are some schools are looking at social emotional learning. And when I was with the alternative school, I was a part of a group, and we did a whole, we made plans. We would meet, on our own time, and we made all these plans, and then they decided to shut the school down because they said it would cost too much money to actually have these resources that we knew that was needed. And so they shut the alternative school where I worked, they shut it down and said the only people that could go to it were felons.
Oh, wow.
My goodness.
Right.
Because they didn't want to bring the resources in.
You don't want to put them in a nice facility.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
So all of the talk about rehabilitating,
Yes.
We're always talking about rehabilitation, but they really don't rehab.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Felons or kids who've been deemed and labeled as trouble.
Right.
Because, now we don't have the funding
For it.
for that
Yeah.
over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Time and energy, funding.
Right.
In an ideal world, if there was all the funding and all the things, and we can just like start from scratch, like, what ideas do you all have, and how do you see?
For me and the environment that I teach in now, I mean all of the environments, because it's an urban setting, we're similar. But what I see now, and now that I'm a little older in my teaching, when you start teaching at 23, 24, you don't see things because you're still growing as an individual. But anyway, right now, I want to give these kids experience. Okay.
Yes.
So they need to step outside of the community that they know, and then you need to take them places
I like that.
so that they can see things and do different things, because they don't get outside of their area most of the time. They don't have the resources. And then they need to see, okay, let's go help in the community. All right, let's see what we can do. How can you be of help to somebody else? You may not have a lot, but you can still help somebody else in some type of way. So I just think they need experience.
So learning outside of the classroom, hands-on through experience. I
Listen,
love that.
I take my kids on walks now, because we want to step outside of that classroom, that box that we're in. And it's like, okay, let's walk, let's talk. We can talk about the lesson out here. Leave the computers, just leave them, put them down. We can talk it through.
Yeah.
And so we'll walk around the building a lap or two, and we'll just talk.
I love that.
And that's it.
I love that.
And then the kid be like, we getting graded for it? Sure. You want to grade participation? Sure. Yeah. Because it's still, even though they're in an alternative setting, they've been conditioned to.
Like, I need a grade.
Does this count for a grade? Sure.
Because I did really well.
Right. I talked. I said one thing. Can I get my points? Sure. Because you talked.
Right.
Yeah.
So just stuff like that.
And I absolutely love that. And I wonder how realistic it would be for smaller class sizes, because you have a smaller class size because it's an alternative school. Can you imagine in a public school if they had smaller class sizes?
I don't understand where the shift happened.
Yeah.
I came up in Detroit public schools, and I felt like we went on all the field trips.
Oh my gosh,
We got to do everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Everything. And it's like, Nyla hardly ever comes home when she was in elementary, so they went on a couple.
Yeah, they don't anymore.
You know
what they do? They have like
museum,
right?
The hands-on children, the
museum,
the
aquarium,
and stuff like.
They have virtual field trips. Yeah, they have virtual field trips, which is BS.
That's garbage.
Yeah. I'm like, they can
look on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm like, what is that? Thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know, and now I need to research. Like, when did we stop? Going places with the kids? Because I felt like that made me excited about school.
Yes.
Oh my
we were
goodness,
always doing that.
Remember field trip day?
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
And it seemed like it was a lot. I lived in Colorado in elementary school. I remember the planetarium and whatever museums. Like, we did a ton, and they pile us up in a bus, us little bobblehead children, and
Right.
I mean, I don't know how they did it, but we did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's what our children need.
Yes.
They need exposure.
Yeah.
And public service. They need to be taught public service. I I made my list, Leonette. The first thing, and it's already been brought up, we're going to have to stop tying school funding to property taxes. We're going to have to recognize a good education as a right rather than a privilege. Right now, it's a privilege. It's not a right that everyone is due. And we're going to have to start promoting diversity among students and school staff. Every classroom should have an assistant. And
Especially
ratio.
if you're not going to minimize
should,
it, yeah.
You should not have 25 kids and one adult in the room.
100%.
Try 40.
It's too much.
I used to have
Really,
more.
it's exhausting for the children and it's exhausting for the teacher. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah,
We're going to
that's
have to
amazing.
raise teachers' pay
Yep.
to reflect their value to society. Teaching is the only profession that you have to have a college degree, and then you have to get certification, and then most teachers have to get a master's in order to be paid anything above living wage. But our salary is so low.
Mhm.
And I came from corporate to teaching, and I never did make as much as I did in corporate.
Yeah.
Being there for 14, close to 15 years. And I also said that we needed more emphasis on social, emotional learning, and we were going to have to provide physical and mental health services. We know that there's so much has been taken out of the schools as far as physical activity too, like we were saying about recess.
Yeah.
And now you have kids that are just sitting around
Yeah.
for 5 to 10 minutes. And I went to a class before I left, and it was supposed to be gym class and health class, and they were just sitting in the bleachers. That's all they were doing, was sitting in the bleachers and talking. And so those are some of the solutions.
Yeah.
And
I love those solutions. And getting rid of these standardized tests, which goes back to the whole funding thing.
And listen,
Exactly.
Yeah. This is the crazy thing about the standardized test. Listen, I gotta laugh. I laugh every time. We have students with special needs, right? They have IEPs, which we have accommodations and modifications for these students that we have to make when we're doing our lessons for them. But you give them the same test as everybody else in the end. You don't give them a test.
That makes sense. That's super logical.
They get the same
sense.
test?
They get the same test. They may get to.
That's right.
If their
It's a
IEP says you can
What
read
a
it to them,
joke.
they may be able to get the test read to them, like the passages. But it's still the same
Oh my
test.
God.
But all year we've been giving them different
materials.
instruction
Okay.
with smaller passages. We've chunked material for them because they may need that, but depending on what it says, but you give the exact same test to the students that
Who's running the zoo?
I want seriously.
So we talk about standardized tests. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
I give my kids that I've chunked the material for them all year, but you're giving them a passage that's 4 pages now at the end.
Yeah.
But it's getting read to them. They're still not, it's too
Comprehending.
much.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any
Make it
dang
make
sense.
That's why every time we talk about standardized tests,
It is so
it's
systematic.
crazy.
It is such.
It is.
It is just.
Well, if we make enough noise, we can tear it down, people, and start again. I don't know. I would love to, if anybody is listening and they're way up there in the education system, I would love to talk to you because I want to know what the hell is going on.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Right?
Erica, what about they say, well, you can read the test to them, or you can put them in a small group.
To do
That's
the
the
test?
other thing that is
my
a
God.
joke.
Oh my God.
And we realize that but we're supposed to be doing differentiated instruction. And we're supposed to be having our students do things that their way. Like if you have a certain, disability or different way of learning, it should be targeted to you, but they give you the same test, or someone doesn't speak English, and they'll give them a Spanish to English dictionary. and say,
Right.
here you go.
They won't
come
give them
on.
the test in Spanish. We can't give it to
Really?
them. No, they get the English version.
Oh my god.
And they have to
Yes.
get a dictionary
Oh
to
my
translate.
And then you're
But
supposed to use your
giving
time.
them Esau
The whole time.
all year.
Whoa.
Child.
This is just
It's a joke.
pitiful. Carolyn, you said it earlier. This is just pitiful. And you know, I do want to say one thing before.
Yes, ma'am.
Because
I love when you talk, Meghann. I want to hear it.
you know, I want to say that this is, I mean, said it earlier, but this is not about teachers, right? I truly, and of course, there's always bad apples. There's bad apples everywhere, but teachers, I honor teachers so much. And Erica and Carolyn and all the teachers who are out there, this is what you do in this broken system. It's incredible. And truly, I mean, it really, I just can't even imagine what you do every day to try and help these kids and then work in a system that is like this.
Yeah. And their hands are tied. There's
tied.
only so much you can do.
Right.
And it's
So I just my heart goes out to
teachers.
But I'm
Teachers,
definitely
yeah.
one of those ones that I will walk right up to the line.
Sure.
I'm not supposed to cross,
Right.
and I'm gonna put my toe on it. I put my toe on it to do what I gotta do for these kids. So yeah, that's what I do.
Carolyn, you walked across the line and down the street.
Yes,
didn't you?
I jumped over the line. And
You see, I listen.
You'll get there one day, Erica.
you will.
Yeah, no, I'm there.
Yeah.
I've learned to work around it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when my students are success stories in their own right, I know
Right.
I've done my job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
I've done my job because they've been successful,
Right.
in their way, and that's all I need.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's it. That's how I look at it.
I love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Bye.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Virago 24/7. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and please give us 5-star ratings. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Virago 24_7 and on Facebook at Virago 24/7 and just connect with us and share your story. We'd love to hear from you.